I think people may dream about, but you don't dream about it out loud, kind of like your best.
Kelvin Costner has just sparked controversies with the savage response he gave a woman who accused him of sexism. According to the woman, Costner treats men in Hollywood with equality and respect.
One I ever really saw myself standing in, quite honestly. The truth is, I stood a better chance.
While he rarely estend the same courtsey to his female partners, she also accused him of extending the same treatment in other facets of his life. What was Kelvin's savage response to these accusations, and how did the woman react? Join us as we discuss the exciting exchange between this feminist and Hollywood star. The confrontation begins. A feminist woman approached Kelvin Costner, a popular Hollywood actor known for his kind demeanor toward women in the industry. The encounter occurred after a noon interview at a well-known media station in America. As Kelvin was heading towards his car, a crowd of fans were asking for his autograph, and this woman boldly asked him about his attempts to suppress women in the film industry. Kelvin saw the woman's confrontation as a mere question, but before he could respond, the woman brought out her megaphone to show how serious she was about the question. Again, in a loud voice, this woman asked Kelvin if he had done enough to support women in Hollywood. Her question was loaded with the expectation of accountability, a tone that pierced through the usual clamor of fans and reporters. Kelvin, known for his calmness and kind-hearted reputation, was caught by surprise but maintained his usual composed manner. He responded thoughtfully, stating that he had always made an effort to respect and support his colleagues, regardless of gender. From Kelvin's measured and respectful tone, his intention to answer the question without engaging in unnecessary conflict with the woman was very glaring. However, despite his honest answer, the woman wasn't satisfied with his response. She pressed on with her tone becoming increasingly demanding as she criticized the general state of misogyny in Hollywood and called on Kelvin to take a more active stand. According to her, respect and support for the women in the industry were not enough to further fuel her allegation. She demanded that he use his platform to speak out more against the toxic masculinity prevalent in the industry. This directly challenged Kelvin's conduct and the broader issue of gender inequality in entertainment, fraught with complexities and strong opinions. The next thing will shock you. As the intensity of the confrontation began to spread, the crowd asking him for his autograph began to take notice. A hush fell over the area as people realized this was no ordinary interview. Sensing the intensity of the situation, Kelvin took a moment to reflect before delivering a response that would shift the tone of the confrontation entirely. Instead of shying away from the question, what he did shocked everyone. He returned the question to the woman by asking her a question. He wondered whether, when watching his films, she saw solid female characters or women being sidelined. His sharp question forced the feminist to reconsider her initial assumptions about his body of work. In response, the woman acknowledged that his films featured strong female characters, but she quickly tried to pivot the conversation back to her original point. After her response, Kelvin could not help but speak to her with a firmer, more bossy tone. He asked her once again by pointing out that the presence of strong, capable women in his films, such as The Postman Man, The Bodyguard, Dances with Wolves, Hidden Figures. To support his claim, he justified that he had always worked with women as equals and emphasized that these actresses were powerful and didn't need a man to help them. With this response, he brought both his fans and another crowd who had been murmuring and hanging on the woman's question back to his side. His sudden turn from a calm and polite speech manner to a substantial and defensive tone demonstrated his unwillingness to be accused of complicity in Hollywood's gender issues without reason. The feminist, however, continued to push, insisting that Keanu, given his influence, should be more vocal about fighting patriarchy. It was a familiar argument, often leveled at celebrities with large platforms who are expected to use their influence for advocacy.
I don't know where the time has gone. I stand here and I can't help but think that there's been some kind of mistake, like this isn't for me.
In response, Kelvin maintained his calm, but delivered a powerful rebuttal by agreeing that Hollywood was full of problems and that women in the industry faced unfair challenges. However, he argued that shouting about these issues in every interview wasn't the solution. According to him, actual change for women came from treating the women around him with respect and working alongside them as equals. His emphasis was on letting actions speak louder than words, a message that resonated with many in the crowd. Despite all the sincere answers he has given the woman still was not satisfied, and Kelvin's response this time is not the gentle and honest answer he had been giving the woman. It was indeed a savage response that shocked the crowd. Kelvin's savage response. Compared to the honest answer he had been giving the woman, this time around, he moved closer to the woman who had been throwing her question with his gaze fixed on the woman. In his response to the woman, he asked the woman this savage question to calm the crowd. "You say I should be doing more, but let me ask, what have you done anything to fight for women's equality than this?" After asking her this, the woman was short of words because she had never expected Kelvin to be a savage. Apart from seeing Kelvin as a gentle guy who doesn't have much energy to drag people, mainly from the way he reacts to comments on his social media page, she never for once thought anyone would dare to question her advocacy for the feminist movement. In her response to Kelvin's initial question, she said she had been part of the feminist movement and has dedicated her career to advocating for women's rights. What was Kelvin's response to her reply? Jokingly and jestily, Kelvin replied that it was admirable. He savagely tells her it's easy to criticize on the sidelines. It's easy to point fingers and say someone else should do more. But he has partnered and worked with strong and talented women throughout his career, and his actions have consistently shown his worth.
You know, I think I was pretty adjusted, but the truth was, when I got to about 30 and I looked back, it really was hard on me.
Which he doesn't need to shout on every platform he has, because that's his reality. After this response, the whole atmosphere went silent, and the woman had no quick response to tackle Kelvin, which made the crowd describe his response as the perfect savage response to handle criticism when doing the interview. His attitude and response to turn the conversation around make it clear that actions matter. On the other hand, this woman, who had earlier challenged Kelvin for not doing enough for gender equality, found herself on the defensive. Although her entire career focused on similar causes, her allegation against Kelvin seemed to lack substantial evidence. As the dust settled, the woman tried again, this time more conversational, asking if it wasn't his responsibility to lead by example. Without hesitation, Kelvin replied that he was leading by example in a measured and elaborate voice, explaining that many Hollywood figures champion these causes. The industry, he pointed out, places great emphasis on gender equality and inclusivity, regularly implementing policies to reflect this. That's not all about his response. He continued to say that some people like to make noise about their efforts, but others choose a quieter path, and he does not need a megaphone to support women. If you want to change, you can start with respect. For the woman, Kelvin's words seemed to resonate with the woman, and for a moment, the tension between them stopped. Kelvin's response was not an attack, but a challenge to think differently, and it caused a lot of reaction from the public. Public reaction to Kelvin Costner's response. After Kelvin's response, one notable impression he left with the crowd is that he is not a man anyone can mess around with questions about feminism or how women in the industry are treated. According to one of the commenters on his action on X, he said anytime Kelvin appears on the screen, anyone who is to interview him should bear in mind that he is a man of action with principles guiding him. Although some praised him for his responses, others still criticized him for throwing savage responses at the woman. Another commenter praised him for not raising his voice at the woman despite how much the lady provoked him. Another common reaction from the media was his refusal to engage in a shouting match. Instead, calmly and intelligently dissecting the feminist's argument won him widespread respect. Not everyone shared this point of view. Another ex-user and acclaimed supporter of the feminist voice had a different take. Despite her respect for him, she posted that he missed an opportunity to champion the feminist cause. His silence on broader systemic issues was disappointing. This comment sparked a heated debate in the replies, with some agreeing that celebrities with large platforms should speak out more on feminist issues. Others argued that Kelvin's actions speak louder than words, and the online chatter didn't stop there. On Instagram, one fan account posted a short meme of the interview with a caption that shows he doesn't support Kelvin's response.
Who was Sister Sasagawa, and why were her prophecies so feared? Born in Japan on May 28, 1931, Sister Sasagawa's early years were mostly her dealing with health issues. Although she was born prematurely and already constantly facing health problems, her spirit remained strong. But her life suddenly took a dramatic turn when she was 19. Sadly, a medical error during surgery left her paralyzed and unable to move for 16 long years. During this time, she was moved from hospital to hospital and underwent many surgeries, but her condition did not change. While Sister Sasagawa was in a clinic in Myoko, Niigata, she met a kind and devoted nurse named Miss W. Miss W's strong Catholic faith and compassionate care not only helped Sister Sasagawa's health improve, but also introduced her to the Christian faith. This meeting was a turning point in Sister Sasagawa's life, sparking a deep desire to explore her spirituality. With renewed faith and determination, she decided to dedicate her life to God. Although her parents initially worried about her health, they eventually supported her decision, and she joined a community of Catholic sisters in Nagasaki. Sister Sasagawa's spiritual journey continued to evolve in 1969 when she joined the Handmaids of the Eucharist.
Sister Agnes Sasagawa, born May 28, 1931, a religious sister of the Handmaids of the Sacred Heart of Jesus in the Holy Eucharist, has died at age 93 on August 15, 2024.
A community that allowed her to live a life dedicated to God while still being part of the world. She thought life would get more peaceful and a bit easier, but she couldn't be farther from the truth. In early 1973, Sister Sasagawa's life took a dramatic turn when she suddenly lost her hearing. The doctors told her that she would likely never hear again, but she refused to give up. She worked hard to learn how to read lips, determined to find a way to communicate with others again. Then, in 1974, something unexpected happened. While she was praying during a special ceremony, an angel appeared to her and told her that her hearing would be restored for a short time later that year. And just as the angel predicted, Sister Sasagawa's hearing came back. But here's the catch. It was going to last for only 5 months. 8 years later, in 1982, the angel appeared to Sister Sasagawa again with another message. This time, the angel told her that her hearing would be completely restored forever, thanks to the help of the Virgin Mary. This was a miraculous promise, and Sister Sasagawa was overjoyed. She had been through so much, but her faith had never wavered. Now, she had hope that she would be able to hear again and continue her important work. Sister Sasagawa's life was filled with amazing events that couldn't be explained. The angel's prediction about her hearing being restored came true again, marking another incredible chapter in her life, but the miracles didn't stop there. In 1983, Sister Sasagawa's story became connected to a Korean woman named Miss Teresa Chun, who was in a coma-like state due to terminal brain cancer. When a group of Korean pilgrims visited the convent where Sister Sasagawa lived, a miracle happened, and Miss Chun was completely healed. This amazing event was attributed to the power of Our Lady of Akita.
On April 22, 1984, a Marian apparition was approved by the Catholic Church after 8 years of investigation. That apparition was Our Lady of Akita in Japan.
Apparently, the healing of her hearing was just the beginning of the series of supernatural events in Sister Sasagawa's life. There's more to her story, and it's even more incredible. Each event has strengthened her connection with God and inspired others to believe in the power of prayer and divine intervention. Now get ready to hear more about the absolutely shocking miracles that happened in Sister Sasagawa's life and inspired countless people. On June 12, 1973, Sister Sasagawa entered the chapel and saw a mysterious bright light coming from the tabernacle. This was definitely no ordinary visit to the chapel. The light was a sign that something special was about to happen. 2 days later, on June 14th, the light returned, this time shining brightly in red. Father Yasuda believed that these lights were a clear indication that the Virgin Mary was about to appear, but that was only the beginning. On the eve of the Feast of the Sacred Heart, June 28, 1973, something truly amazing happened. As Sister Sasagawa and her fellow sisters prayed in silence, a group of angels appeared around the altar, filling the space with their presence. The next day, During the rosary, Sister Sasagawa had another incredible encounter. A mysterious figure appeared to her right, her guardian angel. Not only did the angel appear, but it also shared prayers with Sister Sasagawa, some of which were similar to the teachings given to the 3 children at Fatima. In 1916, the angel's teachings were deeply meaningful, containing important messages and predictions that Sister Sasagawa would remember and carry with her. These were not just ordinary prayers, but special communications from God that connected Sister Sasagawa's experiences with those of other visionaries throughout history. On June 28th, Sister Sasagawa had an extraordinary experience during prayer when angels appeared to her. But that wasn't all. She also felt a sudden sharp pain in her left palm and arm, and when she looked, she saw a cross-shaped mark that was bleeding heavily. Amazingly, the same thing happened to the wooden statue of the Virgin Mary in the chapel, which also began to bleed in a similar pattern. But the events didn't stop there. On August 3, 1973, Sister Sasagawa was awoken in the middle of the night by her guardian angel, who urgently told her to get up. This was no ordinary wake-up call. It was a spiritual alert, signaling Sister Sasagawa to prepare for more challenges ahead. The angel's message was clear. Sister Sasagawa's journey was far from over, and she needed to be ready for what was to come, the strange attack on Sister Sasagawa. The very next day, Sister Sasagawa had a terrifying experience. As she was about to enter the chapel, she felt a dark presence attack her physically. She believed this was an attack by the devil, trying to stop her from praying, but Sister Sasagawa didn't let it stop her. She continued to pray and trust in God. And then, something strange happened on September 19, 1973, during evening prayers. The statue of the Virgin Mary, which had bled before, started to sweat profusely. But this was not just any ordinary sweat. It was an oily, scented liquid that smelled like heaven. Everyone who saw it was amazed and couldn't understand how it was happening. But the most unsettling miracle of all happened on January 4, 1975. The same wooden statue of the Virgin Mary, which had bled and sweated, now began to weep real tears. This wasn't just a quick cry. It was a steady stream of tears that flowed for a long time. Scientists even studied the tears and confirmed that they were human tears. This was an almost unbelievable miracle that touched the hearts of all who witnessed it. On October 15, 1983, a miracle happened that went beyond Japan's borders. A Korean woman named Miss Teresa Chun, who was in a coma-like state due to terminal brain cancer, was healed after prayers were said for her at Sister Sasagawa's convent. This amazing recovery was fully documented by before and after X-rays and was considered a medical marvel. Earlier in 1973, Sister Sasagawa had encounters with the Virgin Mary that changed her life and sent shockwaves through the Catholic community worldwide.
National Public Radio reported a story this week about a Maryland community embracing their Catholic faith in everyday life.
During these encounters, Sister Sasagawa received 3 important messages from the Virgin Mary that deepened her faith and had a profound impact on the world. The messages were delivered in a small chapel in Akita, Japan, under extraordinary circumstances. The chapel, made of a single piece of Japanese katsura tree, was where the ordinary met the divine. On July 6, 1973, Sister Sasagawa was praying in the chapel when the statue of the Virgin Mary began to glow. This supernatural light signaled the start of a series of profound divine communications. During this first encounter, the Virgin Mary acknowledged Sister Sasagawa's physical suffering and hearing impairment, seeing them as signs of her spiritual calling. The message was clear and focused on reparation, and it was the beginning of a journey that would take Sister Sasagawa and the world on a path of discovery and faith. Sister Sasagawa was given a special task by the Virgin Mary to pray a specific prayer, the prayer of the handmaids of the Eucharist. This prayer was not just for her own healing, but also to help bring salvation to the world through the Eucharist. The Virgin Mary's message was clear. It was time for deeper spiritual commitment and prayer for the Church and its leaders. The Virgin Mary emphasized the importance of praying the Rosary and making amends for sins, which she believed had the power to reduce the sins of the world. This message was not just for Sister Sasagawa. but for the entire world. The Virgin Mary's next message on August 3rd was even more urgent. She was very sad and hurt about the sins of humanity, which she said hurt God deeply. She asked for people to console Christ and soften God's anger. If people did not repent, a severe punishment would come upon the world, affecting everyone, both good and bad. The Virgin Mary also warned of conflicts within the Church and a decline in faith. Her final message on October 13th was even more dire, predicting fire from the sky and a punishment greater than the flood. But she also offered hope. The rosary and the sign left by Christ would help people endure the trials to come. The Virgin Mary repeated the importance of praying the rosary, especially for the Pope, bishops, and priests.
And today I am going to teach you, very, very simply, how to pray the rosary. Now, the rosary has a very long history across centuries of Christian worship.
When the strange events at Akita started happening, the local church leaders decided to investigate Sister Sasagawa's messages and the miraculous things happening around the statue of the Virgin Mary. This wasn't a simple investigation. It was a complicated and thorough inquiry that lasted for decades and looked deeply into the supernatural claims that were shocking the local community and scaring people around the world. The investigation began in 1975 when Bishop John Shiroito of Niigata, who was very interested and maybe a bit confused by the reports, reached out to the Vatican's Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, or CDF, for guidance.
Pope Francis appointed the new prefect of the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith, Archbishop Victor Manuel Fernandez.
The CDF told Bishop Shiroito that he was responsible for investigating the events as the local church leader. So in 1976, a special commission was set up to look into the matter, but this commission couldn't definitely say whether the events were supernatural or not, and their findings left more questions than answers. Bishop Eto didn't give up on uncovering the truth behind the mysterious events at Akita. With new guidelines from the CDF and more compelling evidence, he pushed for a deeper investigation. By 1981, the situation had changed, and Bishop Eto had gathered more evidence that could support the supernatural claims. He put together a complete file of these new facts and presented them to the CDF, but the CDF's response was still not enthusiastic, and they declined to start a new examination. But Bishop Eto was determined and didn't give up. In 1982, he met with CDF officials to present his case and argue that their previous response might have been based on a misunderstanding. Bishop Eto's persistence paid off in 1984, after almost 8 years of careful examination and reflection. He made a bold move by issuing a statement recognizing the supernatural character of the events related to the statue in the convent. He allowed veneration of the Holy Mother of Akita within his diocese, but made it clear that this was a private revelation and not as important as public revelations that are essential for salvation. Bishop Eto was careful with his words, leaving room for further investigation by higher authorities. He respected the church's hierarchy and was committed to finding the truth. The Akita apparitions took another turn in June 1988. Bishop Eto, who had retired by then, met with Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, the head of the CDF. Cardinal Ratzinger gave his verbal approval to Bishop Eto's 1984 letter, which was a significant but subtle nod of support, but he didn't make a formal judgment about the credibility of the events, keeping the Vatican's cautious stance. Despite this, opinions within the church remained divided. In 1990, Archbishop Peter Shirayanagi of Tokyo expressed skepticism about the Akita events, saying they were no longer to be taken seriously. But Bishop Eto's declaration was never reversed, which means that, according to canon law, the apparition remains officially approved for the Diocese of Niigata. Decades later, in 2019, Sister Agnes Sasagawa once again got the world's attention with a shocking message. In October 2019, Sister Agnes Sasagawa.
It has been reported that Sister Agnes Sasagawa of the Our Lady of Akita Apparitions died yesterday, August 15th.
Who had become a humble nun who had lived a quiet life since her earlier experiences, received a new message from her guardian angel. But little did she know the message would have something to do with BBC newsreader Kate Williams' health issue. The angel, who had not spoken to her in years, visited her on a calm morning and gave her a simple yet profound directive. The message was urgent and echoed the tone of past encounters. The angel told Sister Sasagawa to cover herself in ashes, pray a rosary of reparation every day, become like a child, and offer sacrifices every day. This message was first shared on a Catholic radio station in Massachusetts, and it drew on ancient traditions of penitence and renewal. Covering oneself in ashes is a biblical sign of mourning and repentance, showing sorrow for one's sins and asking for mercy. The call to become like a child basically shows Christ's own words about the need for purity of heart and humility to enter the kingdom of heaven. Sister Sasagawa's lifelong theme of intercessory prayer continues to be a vital message, encouraging people to turn to prayer and devotion in these challenging times. Praying the rosary every day is not just a habit, but a powerful tool to fight against the evil that affects our world today, like war, disease, and moral decay. The message from Sister Sasagawa in 2019 is especially important when we look at what's been happening in the world recently. There's been ongoing conflict in Ukraine, rising tensions in the Middle East, and a global pandemic that has caused a lot of suffering. These events have made people rethink their priorities and spiritual values. Natural disasters have also been happening more often and with greater intensity, and we need to respond to them in a spiritual way. Sister Sasagawa's message encourages us to look beyond the physical effects of these crises and consider their spiritual impact. The message also reminds us that each person has a role in healing the world through personal sacrifice and prayer. By making small sacrifices and acts of kindness, we can make a difference. The reaction to this new message has been mixed, just like when the Akita messages first came out. Some people see it as a prophetic warning, while others view it as a reminder of basic Christian duties. Either way, the message encourages us to take our spiritual lives seriously and to work towards healing and redemption in our world. But how did praying more intently have anything to do with Kate Williams? Well, that same year, Kate revealed she has a rare form of cancer. Although she was diagnosed with the condition 2 years before, she was scheduled for another surgery in 2019. Kate shared her story on the You, Me, and the Big C podcast, explaining that she has a very rare type of cancer that affects the abdominal cavity, which is the big space inside the body. She said that according to medical books, there are only 153 known cases of this cancer in the world, and she personally knows of only 3 other people in the UK who have it, whom she met through a Facebook group. Kate described this cancer as very aggressive and often linked to asbestos exposure. Kate also opened up about how isolating it feels to have such a rare disease. She said it's really lonely because there aren't many people who understand what she's going through. Kate described her surgery as the mother of all surgeries because it took the longest of all the procedures she had had. The doctors removed many parts of her reproductive system, including her cervix, uterus, fallopian tubes, and ovaries. They also took out some of the lining of her abdominal cavity, known as the peritoneum. Kate said that although the surgery took 6 hours, she felt lucky because some people with this condition have to undergo even longer surgeries, up to 12 to 14 hours. Kate still experiences some side effects from the surgery, including problems with her bowels and stomach, as well as weak bones. She will need to have annual scans to check for any signs of the cancer returning. Unfortunately, because this type of cancer is so rare, the doctors can't say for sure that she is completely cured. In fact, there is a high chance, up to 70%, that the cancer could come back. Kate's first scan in November was clear, but she had to have regular checkups to monitor her health. After Kate shared her story, many people reached out to offer their support on social media. One of them was Sheila Fogarty, a former presenter on 5 Live, who sent Kate a heartfelt message on Twitter. The podcast where Kate shared her story, You, Me, and the Big C, was also very supportive of Kate. It turns out it was started by Rachel Bland, a BBC presenter who sadly passed away from cancer last year.
Hi everyone, welcome to my first live blog. I'm Rachel Bland. I'm a 39-year-old mum of one little boy.
Rachel Bland was a broadcaster who used her voice to confront the challenge of her breast cancer.
Bland co-hosted the podcast with Lauren Maughan and Deborah James. who have also experienced cancer firsthand. Despite Bland's passing, her co-hosts vowed to keep making the podcast, continuing her legacy and creating a community for people affected by cancer. Sister Agnes Katsuko Sasagawa continued to live for Christ until this year when tragedy struck. Sister Agnes Sasagawa passed away on 15th at the age of 93, after a lifetime of struggling with health issues that began at birth. Her funeral was held 2 days later, on 17th, and was attended only by members of her religious community, the Institute of the Handmaids of the Holy Eucharist. It's worth noting that Sister Sasagawa's passing occurred on a significant Catholic holiday, the Solemnity of the Assumption, which is a fitting coincidence given her devotion to her faith. Sister Sasagawa's death brought renewed attention to the messages she received, which some believe are connected to the famous messages of Fatima.